Okay, I think we are live. Let me just refresh the page. It's a bad start. Sorry, guys, hang on just a second. Okay, I think we are live. Sorry about that bumpy start there. I dropped something stupidly at the wrong time. Right, okay, so this is our first time using Zoom for these live streams. So I'm a little bit unsure as to whether it's working, so bear with me. Yeah, it does appear that we're live. Right, okay. So Sumita, thank you so much for joining our latest live stream, charity live stream. So this is the London Autism Group charity live streams that we do sometimes to support the autistic community and the wider autism community, especially about issues related to COVID-19. And it is just great to have you on joining us today, Sumita. And we're going to talk about, your experience, and in particular, talking about masks, the masks that you've been wearing, and how you've been managing that, and just have a chat about that predominantly. But as people are listening, feel free to put in some questions or comments in the box, and I'll try to pick them up as they come through and present them to Sumita at the right time. So if I don't pick up your question or comment immediately, just be patient, we'll get to it. One last thing before we jump in is just to sort of just give you a heads up that this conversation could be a bit upsetting, so it could be a bit triggering, so please be mindful of that. Of course, if anything gets discussed that does sort of upset you, or you're beginning to feel, uncertain about things and you're feeling uncomfortable, then of course put your well-being first, and pause, and perhaps stop, because we will be getting into this to some extent. So a little warning about that. So before we introduce you, Sumita, just say hi to James as well. How are you doing today, James? Nice to see you.
Hi there. Yeah, we're all doing well here.
How's Daryl doing today?
Yeah, he's been very good. He's asleep. So, yep.
Excellent. All right. So yes, Sumita, it's great to have you on. Do you want to perhaps start by introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Sumita.
Hi. Yeah.
Done.
We know you. We know you, but maybe the listen to people that don't know you so well. Of course, we know you very well, but
I'm an autistic arts maker, person, researcher. Currently, still on a course, MSc Creative Arts and Mental Health at Queen Mary. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
what else say?
yeah, what I know of you is you're very humble, Sumita, because you do an extraordinary amount of work. In particular, you are, you're always doing what you can for the community. It seems to me. I saw a little BBC 5 Live thing that you did recently, which was really nice, where you were talking about some of the issues. And obviously, one of the most famous things that you're known for is the fact that you voice Wren on Pablo, which is just an amazing show. And that is amazing work. It's not just voicing you don't just voice, you write, don't you, as well, for some of those scripts? Or
yeah, I'm like one of the co-writers of Pablo, alongside an autistic writing team. Yeah.
And for those of you listening, just to say, I'd really encourage you to watch out for an upcoming podcast that we'll be releasing within the next few weeks, hopefully, that Sumita kindly recorded with us. And we went into quite a lot of depth about the work you do, and issues around culture and ethnicity and stigma, and other things. It was really interesting chat. So, and mental health as well. So yeah, do listen about that. So, Sumita, would you mind starting off by perhaps talking through your sort of perspective of the pandemic situation and your sort of experiences so far and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I have been living on my own, and I often, it's interesting because at the start of the year, I was starting to think about how I wanted to look more into um, like thinking about autism and isolation and like the links between the two, and like I was thinking about the reasons why I often isolate myself and how that is like just something that happens quite a lot anyway. And this was before this whole entire year, obviously. It got to about February, and I think February was like the first thing I heard of like the virus, like what in the world. And I actually like had this weird like response to reading about it, because I mean I get stuck in like thought patterns where this is why I avoid the news, but I have brain things that tell me that I'm causing these events, or like on the other side of the world, things like that. And so I actually like had started muting all of the words related to the virus like in February,
Wow.
and had this panic reaction in February to it before I even knew it was going to be such like a global thing. And yeah, it was kind of like yeah, like maybe I'll talk more about that later. But so I had been quite isolated anyway, and actually at the start of March I was trying to like, I decided I'm going to try and go out more. I'm going to force myself out into the world. I'm going to not be so isolated. And I went to a tutorial at the start of March. I went into the uni, and I'd been like in my room for a couple of weeks, and I hadn't been looking at the news because I'd muted everything. And I felt like everyone was acting really like, it's always odd anyway when you leave your room, when you've been in your room for a couple of weeks, but I felt like it was straight, like
You felt
people it was kind of, I'm quite sensitive to other people's anxieties, and I felt like, I don't know, but people's reactions as well, like in public on the tube, was just quite, and like racially as well, was like weirder than it normally is. And I just didn't, I kind of like
that's fascinating.
I just didn't.
Yeah, picking that up when you weren't, obviously you weren't tuned in. You were saying you weren't tuned into the news, so you weren't exactly sure as to what exactly was going on. But then when you really still felt, the difference when you went out.
Well, yeah, well, this was in March, and I got to uni, did the tutorial, and I remember like saying like, yeah, it's just because I've been isolated, it's not helping me, so I need to start going out more and things like that. And I was completely oblivious. When and I came back, the commute home was like weird as well. And then I got back, and then I just thought, why is London being really weird? And like I kind of thought I want to find out why everyone in London is being weird. And and then I sort of like Googled stuff, and then I just thought like, oh, and I got stuck in this sort of Google loop. So yeah, it was kind of weird.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So when you Googled it and you suddenly got all this information, how did you react? What was your feeling about that? Were you quite shocked?
It's pretty blurry, to be honest. Like, okay. I did look on Twitter before I looked on Google, because like that's just what happens. And I mean, the thing before that was because there'd been a storm like the month before then, and so that was like the thing that was like the big news thing that was in my head. And then after that there was the thing that I muted, so I hadn't been looking at like anything news related for like a month. And then in March I found out that this like thing had like escalated, and yeah.
So okay, and that's really, really interesting. And so then you obviously you've been since then having to cope with having to potentially wear a mask going out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was only kind of like, so at the beginning, it was sort of like, it was difficult because my self-coping mechanisms to not be isolated with things that I would be doing outside, and I couldn't do those things. So I was basically not going anywhere, and I didn't for the first, well, like March until June maybe, I wasn't going anywhere. Like I'd go to the shop on a Friday. Like I had this routine where I'd go to the shop every Friday, like similar time, and I'd just go for like 5 minutes. And actually, like the positive of that was I was going at the same, like that was probably the most regular that I'd been going to the shop, and like being autistic, like routines suit me really well. So I would, and it was a one-way system in the shop, and so it was kind of like I'd go in, get the same things, and come out, and that was, I wasn't going anywhere else other than that. And at that point, I wasn't wearing a mask, and it got to, I don't know what month it was, but when I started becoming aware of like that I should be wearing a mask, I like tried to wear one, but I was just it was triggering panic attacks every time I put up my face, and like it, like proper panic attacks, like not just this is a bit uncomfortable or I don't like this or I'm anxious, but like this big, I mean, like if you have panic attacks, you kind of like, well, maybe they're different for people, but it's kind of like, it was like, you know, like chest pains, like spinning. It's kind of like, it felt like, I can kind of only describe the panic attacks while wearing a mask as being like, kind of like you're being strangled inside out. Like there's this, like, it was kind of this big rush, and like I get this noise in my head and it's like I'm gonna pass out and be sick. And yeah, and just like chest pains and like struggling breathing every time I put it over my face, which didn't make like rational sense, because like I can put a jumper over my face, I can put a duvet over my head. So like I didn't understand at first, like, why is this happening? Like, is this like, if it's all in my head, then how do I make it stop doing that so that I can just wear a mask in a shop?
So like, having reflected on everything now, what do you think was the sort of underlying, you know, reasons for why you going into panic attacks, given that, you know, you wouldn't with duvets and other things, but you would with the face covering, the mask?
Well, it was a few things. Firstly, going to a shop was already like a highly anxiety inducing situation for me for like various reasons. So like it wasn't only that I was wearing a mask, it was also like my anxiety was already like pretty high up here, about to go somewhere, and that was like the thing that I was going to do before I went to do the thing. And so when you're anxious, your breathing is like difficult anyway, and so like I think like instinctively putting something over my face when my breathing's already difficult is like suddenly making me think, oh, I can't breathe, when I can breathe obviously with a mask, but that's just the response that I had. And other things were just the general anxiety over the whole, like the association with the mask and all of my anxieties about the pandemic and the virus and the I had like just so many things flashing through my head. It was just really highly concentrated, and so like when it was a lot of the associations that would just come, like all the things that I've read on the internet and all of the stuff that people were saying would just come like rushing like into my head. And obviously I knew that I can breathe with it over my face, so it was just, I kind of knew that I just knew that I wanted to train myself to be able to wear one so that I could wear one, and because a part of me knew that I can breathe when it's on my face, so why do I think that I can't?
Right. That's really interesting though, that you sort of associated it with, you know, all of the kind of wider worries and concerns about the whole situation, the impact it could have on you and everyone else, right? You're kind of associating that mask to some extent with that, you're saying, but also your anxiety had already been quite escalated already, you know, because you were sort of already preparing mentally for going out and whatnot, and doing what you needed to do, but then you've got this on top. That's that makes a lot of sense. And I suppose my thought is when you do start to feel panicky, what one of the most useful things to do is, to my understanding, is to begin to breathe and control your breathing. But I suppose in this situation, if you've got a mask on, you're compromised in that respect as well, aren't you? That's going to
Well, it's a bit like if you're swimming and you're scared of not being able to breathe underwater and you panic. It's that same thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't have that very often, but I remember, like, I hadn't been swimming for a while, and then last summer I started swimming again, and I didn't have goggles, and I didn't realize that I was doing this until someone else observed it, but I was like taking these really big breaths for air, like every time like I lifted my head up. And for some reason, when I was wearing, well, there's like science that will tell you why, but like when I wore goggles, I just stopped doing that. And it's like some sort of response that like tells you that you might not be able to breathe. And it's sort of like a similar thing, I guess, with the mask being over my face. It was just, if I was already in like, it's the fact that I was already very anxious, in a very anxious situation, like going to the shop, with all of these triggers that are like, with like my sensitivities, like with all of the triggers that were there, having this, like when your brain is already telling you like your like breathing is all out of sync. And so when you then add something else that you think is restricting your breathing, you're going to automatically, or like that's what happened to me, think that I can't breathe. But
it looks like James, you want to say something, but before we jump in, sorry James, we've got a comment from Kylie Gray, but it's unfortunately a comment that's saying the sound has gone off, and now I'm worried that people can't hear us. So just give me a second, I'm just going to test it. James, you want to say something? But no, I can hear it. I can hear the sound. So maybe it's just Kylie's side. Sorry, James, go ahead, mate.
Yeah, so I totally get what you're saying, Sumita, about too many. I think autistic people generally call it too many spoons. It's like there's just too many things to cope with, and it's like one stress too many. So it's the mask in itself was becoming a trigger. So was it kind of like a meltdown or a shutdown kind of response that you were having? It sounds like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess it was like if I had, so like because I was aware that this panic attack was starting up, my instant reaction was to take it straight off my face. So like if I hadn't have been able to like control the situation and take it off my face, and it would have, like if I'd stayed in the thing, and like I have the awareness to be able to do that, but if I hadn't had the awareness to know what was happening, then it would have, well, I guess it would have ended up in a meltdown or shutdown. But because I had the awareness, I was like I cannot have this thing. But then that's was really stressful because of all of the things on the internet, and like people being quite like shouting at people for not like at the people that can wear masks and didn't want to wear masks. I was like feeling really, really like, when you already have these thought patterns that you're harming other people, and the irrational ones, and then you suddenly you're reading things of people saying like, oh well, like saying that you're irresponsible for not wearing one, and I just like that would make me feel like I had to wear one, but I knew that I would have a panic attack, and so that would make me not want to go to the shop. But then the shop was the only place that I went in the week, and if I didn't go to the shop, then I won't have anything to eat. So it's kind of like was this just big thing?
So that was trapping you even more, stopping you from going to the one place that you were going out.
I mean, I still went, but the times that I went and I wasn't wearing a mask, it was even worse, because I felt like, or like not even worse, but just as bad, because I was panicking then I'd have to deal with the guilt of not wearing a mask, even though like I was, out in the shop for 5 minutes and not breathing, like because of being very conscious of things that people say, and like, taking things that
Did you find a way of coping with that in the end?
Yeah, so I was like, right, I need to train myself how to wear this, because I just felt like, why can I put, you know, I can put a jumper over my face, I can put duvet over my face, like, so I started like just first I was just like, I need to, if I can train myself to wear it indoors for like just for 10 minutes indoors, then I'll be able to wear one. But then kind of what I realized was, and I built that up quite slowly. So first it was like, you know, like 5 seconds, then it was 8 seconds, half a minute, it was quite slowly. But what surprised me was when I managed to be able to wear it for like, you know, I was fine in the flat wearing it for like half a day. And then I went to the shop and it, like, the panic came back again. And I think that reminded me of, it's like when I learned to run on a treadmill and then tried to run outside, and I was really surprised that I couldn't run outside at all. Like, it's just because, and it was the anxiety breathing thing as well, because I was anxious running outside, so I suddenly couldn't breathe. So like that was a similar sort of experience, and I reminded myself that it's like, you know, you get used to something in one environment, but when you go out into another environment, you then have to sort of take that and be like, okay, I've got this, I've progressed this far, now I need to take that and learn how to do that, but in this triggering shop environment. And sort of yeah, but the other I think the other thing was so I made a badge that basically said that I might need to take my mask off because I didn't know where my sunflower lanyard was, and so I made this badge, and that really helped because I felt like people might be more understanding if I wasn't wearing one, or if I had to take it off, and having that option to take it off my face if I had to was reassuring, and helped me to wear it. So
yeah, that what you're describing about changing environment, that's quite a common thing with a lot of people that I've spoken to, other autistic people, that when they're learning anything that's difficult and there's a lot of anxiety and they have to go into another environment. I know someone that couldn't do their academic work, you know, they couldn't go into where they were studying and things like that, but they could do it at home. So it's a similar, I think it's like being, because you're at home in a safe place and then you go out of that environment. So
yeah, definitely.
But I think it's fantastic the way that you've sort of desensitized yourself to putting it on, and that you're really you know, having a good try at coping with it. That's marvelous.
I mean, I knew it was only, I think what drove that was being aware, like I knew that it was irrational, and because of the way that I thought it through, like I'm able to do that. Like, not everyone can. I wouldn't force everyone to go, like I wouldn't want everyone to go through the process that I went through, training myself to wear one, if it's too difficult for them. Like, I was able to do that, and I had to be able to do that in a way. I like not everyone, and like other autistic people have different reasons, and have more sensory difficulties to having it on their face as well, which wasn't so much of the thing for me. But like, I think I'm trying to say, like, I guess it was knowing that, hang on a minute, how come I can, like, I know that I can breathe with this thing on, like I kind of yeah, and the fact that it was kind of like it was almost worse to not wear one for me as well, mentally. So like I kind of like, whether I wore one or not, there was this thing that I had to get over, so like, or I had to deal with or find ways of coping with. So me being sat here, I just thought, well, I've learned how to do other things that I haven't been able to do. Maybe if I just like try this, then it, like, you know, be fine. Yeah.
I mean, it's great that you've got that ability to sort of self-manage, and you've got that insight, and you know how to sort of look after yourself, you know, as much, you know, in these sorts of situations. I'm just thinking about others that have got similar sort of reactions or you know, feelings and anxieties that don't know, as aren't able as you as perhaps being able to manage it and cope with it. And that's quite it's quite a thought, really, to think about that, the sort of impact. I mean, for most people, you know, it's just a good, I think this is a really important lesson for the just general public as well. You know, I mean, this is just another example of how complex these issues actually are. And for a lot of people, it seems like a not big deal, but actually for many it is. And one of the, but it sounds like one of the main issues here is the underlying potential judgments from the public, you know. And to be honest with you, that does exist. I mean, there are people that always, they'll be looking and judging, and that's just another example of why the stigma has to end. You know, people just need to stop with the judging and start with the understanding. That you leap to judgment before you perhaps think through and understand, you know, and be compassionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, like there were two things where, like, one thing was like I wished that everyone because obviously there were reasons why people were getting really angry at people not wearing masks, and so there was like the passion behind that, what people were saying towards that. But then at the same time, that was what like the amount of words that I had to mute online just so that they weren't going to trigger me, because like even I felt like and like I was grateful for the people that were making it, you know, visible that not everyone can wear a mask, but like, and kind of saying, if you can wear one, but there are people that can't, and be sort of like don't be so quick that's why the badge really helped, and the lanyards are really good, I think, because like I just wished that when I went out, like, and obviously this is, a lot of it is just irrational, hypothetical in my head stuff, but like I kind of wish that I knew that every time I went in that shop that everyone else knew that I was trying my best, or like, you know, that I went, that people just sort of felt like I was trying, like that everyone's trying their best. But I know that, yeah, there are people that you know, it's not everyone was just not wearing one because they couldn't. So yeah.
Do you think the government could have made it clearer that, you know, could have dealt with this a little bit more clearly, in that, well, they did of course say that some people are exempt, etc. You know, some people with disabilities and other situations are exempt. Okay, they said that, but do you think they could have been calling for more compassion from the public, just not just saying some people are exempt, full stop? And I personally didn't hear much from the authorities in terms of, you know, if you see someone not wearing a mask, it may be because they're unable to, and it's an invisible thing, and so therefore don't judge. I mean, do you think that might have been useful, or do you think the government could have done more just in terms of that kind of messaging?
I mean, I've been quite unexposed to what the government's been saying because
I
haven't been reading it. But but I don't know. I know what other people have been saying online, but I don't. I'm quite unaware as to what was going on, to be honest.
What do you think, James?
I think the government are pretty clueless about, but so are a lot of people, really, about everything that autistic people go through, and neurodivergent people in general. So there's still a long way. It's a long road to educate everybody, including the people at the top. So they wouldn't have even known to
you're
make
right.
an announcement, and
you're right.
Their advisors wouldn't have known either. So
which is just another reason why they need to be working with people who can represent, you know, those sorts of issues, and working with rather than.
I mean, look at all there's been so much mishandling of the initial the advice that the National Institute, what they called NICE.
Yeah,
Do you remember
excellence.
Yeah, their initial sort of rejection of disabled people in general. They was saying at the start that any people with disabilities wouldn't be able to get hospital treatment if they got COVID and things like that.
Yeah.
And
You're
there
right.
had to be some pressure put on them from the public to change that view very quickly, and also just the general consultation that the government made to deal with COVID. They've made up this list of very, very ill people that are on the vulnerable list, but it leaves out a huge millions and millions of disabled people, people with lifelong conditions and things like that. So millions of people couldn't get shopping deliveries and things like that when they needed to be isolating, but they had to force themselves to go out when they couldn't, when they, like people like, our children and, people with learning disabilities and things like that.
Fully agree, mate. Fully agree. I just think in this particular circumstance, talking about these issues with masks, that I'm thinking about what Sumita went through.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's kind of maybe a little different for yourself, Sumita, because you weren't in tune with what the government was saying, perhaps. But let's say you were listening to what the government's saying. I don't know. You can tell me, but if you'd heard them say, all the usual things. So they were coming out saying, social distancing, hand hygiene, and masks, right? They were saying these core things, do this, that, the other. If they had added don't judge or some messaging about don't judge others or be compassionate, do you think that might have maybe helped a little bit with your anxiety had you known that the government was pushing this out, this kind of message?
It's hard to say, but like I think that other and I mean I think that would have affected how like the general public would have reacted to the whole scenario, and so that obviously would have in turn affected the conversations around that. But it's hard to say because I was like, all of these things that I was reading were like, just the conversations that I was seeing like online on social media. So I guess if the government had said those things and people had responded to those and people had reacted differently in public, then obviously that would have changed the things that people were saying. And so in turn, yes, that would have like possibly made things better, but it's hard to say because I don't know what other things that
I don't think it would have harmed
will make up to make me more anxious anyway. So but yeah, it would have been better for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I mean, you talked a little bit about how you coped, as to what you did and everything. What have you got any other recommendations for others as to, sort of potential solutions in terms of other people who are still struggling with this, based on your experiences today, who are still really struggling putting that mask on, anxiety? I mean, both in terms of like mindset that you might recommend to people, or what to do if they're beginning to panic, or even just like how to wear a mask. I don't know if that helps, because I saw your video. You've got a YouTube video, haven't you? And you were saying that maybe loosening it can help, things like that.
So that video was basically a compilation of little video clips that actually that video was one of my coping mechanisms, to be honest, because I was talking online to a friend who said, oh, like, just vlog your journey and send it to me, like, just because I was saying I've been trying to go to the shop for hours and this is ridiculous and just all of this, and that was just me trying to amuse myself and at the same time as documenting something, but like just trying to like just entertain myself through the journey of trying to persuade myself to go to the shop and trying to be able to cope with this mask on. So like I wouldn't say that, you know, everything in the video was completely serious advice, but it's a live documentation of just what I was doing. But I think generally I think the first thing was to just get used to the mask as an object. And that meant just get used to them, like just sort of get used to it as a daily thing that was going to, I mean, I wasn't going out every day, but just sort of having it visible as opposed to hiding it away because I think it's going to trigger me. So getting used to seeing it. And sort of just playing with it, just wearing it. So there's a bit of it in the video, but just trying out different ways of wearing it and just getting used to having it on my face. Other things were making it smell nice.
All right, yeah.
And like just sensory things like that. If you're sensory sensitive, then make sure the material is something that is soft and not that you're not going to have an allergic reaction to, or that's not going to be scratchy and irritable. What else? Generally like making friends with it, just like being like, this is not a bad object. And also like, I think quite an important one for me was wearing it like while like trying to be really relaxed while wearing it, and to associate feeling relaxed and breathing and being relaxed while wearing it. And particularly in the bit before I would leave the house to the shop, I found that like, because it was such a high anxiety thing leaving the house and going to the shop anyway, that like I felt like, I don't know, just like trying to like just be relaxed for at least, you know, half an hour or like whatever, however long before I left, that really helped. And having that option to take it off and being okay with that, like telling myself that it's fine if I have to take it off. So having the badge that I made that just said hidden disability, I might need to take my mask off, that really helped. And also knowing that it's okay if I start panicking again. It's not like I haven't failed. Like I went into a different shop and it suddenly all came back, and it was, you know, a different environment. So like, you know, remembering that, that it's not like, I haven't completely fixed the thing. But there was one other thing. Oh yeah, and another thing that I found useful to remember was that there are things that are different when you're wearing a mask. For example, like if you go to have a drink, you can't just have a drink because you're wearing a mask. And if you go to speak to someone, for example, like the shop person or something like that, if you're already quite like quiet, it's sort of, I wasn't prepared for that. So like, it's just I'm sensitive to other people's reactions to that. So I think I tried to reply and then it was really mumbly, and then their reaction was very impatient. And then that triggered this big thing, and I got really stressed. So just remembering that if you do speak, then, and like, that's something that you have to do, then either have other options for that, like type to speak, or if you're able to speak louder, then you would be used to speaking, or just to be prepared for that reaction of someone not being able to hear you.
Yeah, really good advice. Really, really good advice. So yeah, being sort of prepared for those kinds of possibilities, and as you said, using typing out what you want to say. Right, is that what you're saying? So it's type it out on your phone, or say it to your phone, or one or the other?
Well, I mean,
so it types it out.
It depends on your communication style in general, really. But I mean, just for me, it was useful having remembering those options, and as a speaking person, just being aware that when I speak, I might get that reaction that I got when I spoke quieter and someone couldn't hear me because I had the mask on. So,
thinking about finding new challenges and associated with all this, was one of them for you struggling to sort of understand the non-verbals of other people? But so if others have got a mask on, did that make it harder for you to sort of understand facial expressions and getting sort of cues from them visually? Did it make it harder? Because I've heard that quite a bit.
I mean, I'm maybe not the right person to ask because I've honestly just been going to the shop and coming back here. So it hasn't really been that. I don't know. I don't really have any context for that.
Right. I mean, there's been a bit of research that I've read that suggests that is the case, that for a lot of autistic people, not all, but some, and other people as well, that when they come across others wearing masks, and also it's kind of a twofold thing. When they come across others wearing masks, they find there's anxieties that can get triggered because they're unable to sort of, communicate as effectively because they're not seeing the whole face, so firstly, that's sort of making the communication aspect even harder because they're not, that there's a part of their face being blocked. And the second thing is that being aware that you're wearing a mask, and therefore, you're aware that your communication might not be as clear, similar to what you were saying, really, that you're aware that you're mumbling, you're not mumbling, you're less audible, and then the dynamics that kind of creates. But I'm not thinking so much of, I'm not referring to the audible aspect, but just the awareness that you've got it on, and the communication might be a bit disrupted. I've seen that in some studies that have sort of suggested that up anxiety as well adds to it.
I mean, for me, the face thing would actually, thinking about it, in a way, it would for me, it might seem a bit easier because I mean, I'm not always consciously focusing on that anyway, on people's faces for that information. And also I often cover my own face up because as a reflex sometimes, and sometimes to be able to express something without fear of someone judging what my face is doing, in case that doesn't match what I'm saying. So I don't know if for me personally that would be harder, but I can see why some people might find that harder.
Ginny Grant from Australia, right, from Reframing Autism, she's just commented, great advice, Sumita. So that's nice, thank you very much. And I agree, that was really useful advice as to what people can do. And I actually really like the one about people just perhaps vlogging or diarising how they're feeling prior to going out, as you were saying, and that really helped you said. And that's a really good sort of outlet to perhaps reduce your anxiety and get a state of calmness and sort of process things.
Sometimes you don't know how you feel until you sort of start trying to explain it to someone else. And things like videos, or even just writing to yourself, or there's something about that that's different to just sitting thinking. For me, as someone that uses performance and uses creative outlets to do that, that's the important thing about that for me, is that it shows me how I feel in a different way to how it feels within me. Something happens when I try and communicate that out, and that's not something that might naturally happen through social conversations that I'm not having. So I think that that's something that like, even if you think, oh, why would I sit there with a camera, what would I say, or like, why would I sit there with a piece of paper? I don't write usually, or writing emails to people, or like just kind of like expressing something, like having the option to express something, if that's the kind of person you are.
Yeah, and also perhaps just reaching out to friends and family, or whoever it is that you have perhaps a trustworthy dialogue with, and just talking things out. Reach out. I think I would say, right, just use the opportunities that you have in terms of any close friends or family that you can just talk with, that you trust. And as you said, sometimes you don't know how you're feeling exactly, or you don't know why you're feeling perhaps until you talk it through, and that's very useful.
I think that's why it's like having autistic people to speak to is so important as well, though, because sometimes it can be more isolating trying to reach out when you reach out and people don't get it. And I don't know, like one thing I said earlier about I said something about being like, just being with the mask and like sort of like getting used to it as an object. And it was only when I said it out loud, I thought, well, there's so many people that I could say that to, and they just would not get that at all. But I know that a lot of people would completely get that. So it's sort of helpful if you know people that think in a similar style to you, even if you don't have exactly the same experience.
I think just one other thought I've got is just what I just want to again say what you said, really, which was, I just think, really, really important. I don't think people perhaps think about it that much, but they should. And what you said about being self-compassionate, after the fact, that you shouldn't try not to sort of feel negatively about yourself if you did struggle, or you did have anxieties, or you couldn't, perhaps you just couldn't get yourself out because of it, or you went and you struggled, or whatever it is. The negativity is not going to really help you in any way. You're trying your best, and the circumstances are what they are, and you're just trying to figure it out, and it's not going to hurt. It's not going to be helpful for you to sort of beat yourself over it, because so much of it isn't in your control anyway, is it? That stuff about social judgments, the fear of potential judgments, and everything else, isn't under your control. So I think that's great advice, Amita. Thanks for that. That's really important. Any other thoughts from you, James, or questions?
I can.
James,
can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say.
I think it was.
I can see how it would be really useful to have, if you're vlogging, to have that to look back on, or something written down. If you're trying to go forward and make strategies for yourself, I can see how that'd be really useful. So that's quite a good tip. Thank you, Sumita, for that one.
Yeah. So, have you got any sort of concluding messages or thoughts, Sumita, you'd like to relay?
I don't really know. I think just like everyone has different scenarios, and so like, what works for me isn't going to work for everyone else. I wouldn't like, for me, training myself to wear a mask indoors and then trying that outside and basically getting used to it was something that, like, it's something that I do and something that works for me when I find things difficult. Something that I wouldn't recommend to everyone, because not everyone people have different support needs, and some people need different things than would need. It would for some people it would be safer to have support with that, and to have people supporting that process that I went through. I mean, it was all just things that I was trying out, and some of those things might work for other people, which is kind of why we're talking about it, really. Just in case they are useful for other people. But just for me, like, the main things were also just muting things online and not where I can, and not trying to just like be kind to myself in what I'm exposing myself to, and like just trusting that I am doing the best that I can in the circumstances that I have, and just continuously reminding myself that was helpful.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because there's such a lot of toxic news and things like that out there that it's important sometimes to limit the amount of news that we're taking in, or we could go to the other extreme and obsess about it, and that's not good at all for your mental health. So you did exactly the right thing, and it's great that you've got the foresight that you saw that coming and you took action.
Yeah, thank you. And like, also, I think the other thing is that with this whole pandemic situation, it's so easy, like it's so easy to feel like for me, I felt like everyone's suddenly, like, there's always going to be this like norm that's hovering over me, and I constantly, like, I feel like I felt like there was this collective shared experience that people were having of this whole situation that was different to my own experience, and it's so easy to feel even more isolated by that than the thing that I'm supposed to be isolated by in the first place. So like, I think just remembering that just everyone is different, and just because your scenario is different to someone else's, it doesn't mean that there aren't other people that are experiencing, similar things, or like, not everyone is going through the same collective shared experience that you see online. There's that, but in better words than I just said them in.
No, you said it really clearly. That's a really, really good point. Okay, so I'm just wondering, because this topic's really, really important, and I'm just wondering about people who have been listening to this and have maybe been struggling and they're looking for advice and insight and would have got that from this, hopefully. But if they had anyone had any kind of additional questions or anything they wanted to run by you, Sumita, would that be okay with people to send you a message for any advice about it? Anything like that?
Yeah.
How might they do that? How can people contact you?
On
your Facebook page, perhaps, or
do you want them to send us a message and we can pass it on to you?
I mean, if it's in direct relation to this,
that's what I mean.
Then yeah, maybe through you. I can't I can't
fine.
think properly, so I don't know.
But we'll take the message, definitely.
But I've got my Facebook page and Twitter page as well, and like people can talk to me on those. But yeah, I'm not concentrating properly on that question.
That's okay. No, absolutely fine. I think what maybe makes sense is if they're watching this on Facebook, they've got a question, post it in the comments bit, and then James and I will pick it up and relay it to you, Sumita, no problem. But the point is that you're happy to pick those questions up and advise accordingly. Okay. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It was really fascinating as ever listening to you, your really powerful insights and powerful tips and advice and so forth. So thank you so much for making the time and making a difference. So
thank you, Sumita. You're so self-aware that I think it'll be a brilliant inspiration for a lot of people listening.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know, but thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me speak things.
You're welcome. No, the pleasure's all ours, really. Thank you so much. Okay, I shall. Oh, Ginny Grant has just messaged. Really loved hearing your perspective, Sumita. Great live stream. I agree. Thank you so much. Thanks for that comment. Okay, so I will end the live stream, and Sumita, if you just hang on, we'll just pick up afterwards. But I'm going to end the live stream.
Okay.